Hey, my name is Shovel, the name of the channel is Shovel, and this video is about the utility of cribbing for working underneath a car. 10,000 foot view on cribbing is, it is stacks of wood that have been nailed or screwed or otherwise connected together to provide a safe place to put your car up on top of that is typically going to be higher up than you could get them on ramps or jack stands, and also give you a bit more room under the middle of the car because they go under the tires, not necessarily under the strongest parts of the frame like you would with jack stands. So I'm not going to show you in this video how to build cribbing because there's already a ton of tutorials on the internet for how to do that. Just type into your favorite search engine, how to build cribbing if you're curious, or you're pretty clever. I'm sure you can figure out just by looking at mine how to build them. I am going to share with you my method of construction as well as the dimensions of mine, not necessarily for tutorial purposes, but rather if I've made a mistake, then you can see what mine was built like and maybe not make that same mistake yourself. So to get started, last night I built some cribbing. Right now using it to hold the camera. So there it is. There is a stack of cribbing. Now this is of course 4 units. I'll go ahead and show you a bit more about how they're constructed. As for dimensions, the load surface is 7 2x4s up, and that puts it just about 10.5 inches in height. Comparison, this Rhino ramp here has its load surface a little under 7 inches. Other relevant dimensions, they are 18 inches by 12 inches, and I built these using a dozen 96-inch 2x4s. That includes putting a third rail right down the middle of the top load surface. That is only on the top, the rest is hollow inside, and that's to keep it minimum weight and maximum strength. As you can see from the kind of leakage going out right there, I used liquid nails to build these, as well as some of the regular not liquid nails on every layer. All right, time to make it happen. I don't really know if this is the ideal place to park it yet. It seems like it's about centered where it probably ought to be. And what you might have heard, possibly, while I was driving the car in here, is that my throwout bearing is real noisy. I've got a new clutch kit and new throwout bearing and all the stuff that goes along with it, which is part of the reason why I built this cribbing. So let's get the car up on top of it. This is my first time doing it, so I might make a mistake. That's kind of the point of this video. You can see where I screw up and maybe not make those mistakes yourself. That's as high as it'll go up, so I'm going to see if the wheel cribbing will go underneath the wheels. As you can see here with the jack fully extended, plus that 2x4 just as a load distributor, and of course, 1.5 inch spacer, I can't discount that. It's not quite high enough for me to get the wheel up on top of it. It's close, but not quite there. What I could do is try jacking up by the suspension arm itself so that the wheel is not at full droop. Or alternately, I can just stack a second 2x4 on there. That might make it a bit unstable, but we'll go ahead and give it a try and see if we can get it to lift up just a little bit higher. Yeah, I guess it's still a little early to bust out the summer clothes. This morning it was warm enough, but after I got back from picking up that transmission jack from my friend Monty's house, it got cold, so I had to get into some sort of warmer stuff. But the next thing that I'm going to be doing with this here is I'm going to shake it violently and see if I can get it to get unstable. Hopefully I don't do any damage to anything, but if I do, I'll learn what I wanted to learn, I guess. And if it feels real nice and stable, then we'll get underneath there and I'll see if the transmission jack comes up high enough to get to the transmission, because that's the next job I'll have to be doing on this. And also we'll just take a general evaluation of how much room and what I can reach, and if these are a good idea or not. So let's get to shaking. Yeah, it might as well just be on the ground. That is absolutely solid. I don't have any concerns at all now that I've done that. So let's go check out underneath. Yeah, that's not too bad. I can get my whole fat self up under here and work pretty well. It's not up too high. I think I did the right thing by making this 7 2x4s tall, meaning it's about 10.5 inches. If I want to, of course, I can add another 1.5 inches just by adding another layer to the bottom of those guys, but at this point I don't think I need to. So next, let's go ahead and see if the transmission jack goes up to where the transmission is, because that's of course going to be the next job. Now I'm going to have to remove all this exhaust stuff in order to get the transmission out, but that part I know I can do on jack stands, which means I know I can also do it on these cribs. This jack uses a 1/2 inch drive threaded mechanism for raising and lowering it. And even though it's 1/2 inch drive, it's not advisable to use a impact driver to push these things up and down, because the threaded anvil, meaning there's the screw stock and then there's the anvil, which is like the nut on it, those can get stripped out pretty easily if you're using impact tools. So if you're using a threaded jack or a threaded clamp or anything that uses screw power in order to move something, unless it explicitly says so in the manual, strongly advise against using impact tools on it. So especially because this doesn't belong to me, but even if it did, I'm going to be using a screw gun, a non-impact screw gun, to go ahead and crank it up and down, only because that's a lot faster than just turning it by hand. And then when the time comes later that I'm actually going to be doing work where it's under load, I'm only going to be using hand tools for that portion of it. Again, that's because the screw threads and the anvil in particular are typically not made to bear impact loads, and it'll strip the threads straight out of them. So let's go ahead and get this to work. Yeah, I'd say that gets up high enough. So that's just right underneath the transmission as it is right now. I think it's got a little bit further it can go, but I didn't want to try and squeeze it up against that just yet. There's enough room for me to wrap the strap around that. It's a T5 transmission. The last time we used this, we were taking the transmission out of Monty's car, and I don't know what that is. It's an S550, and it's the anniversary one. I actually don't know a whole lot about that car, aside from that it's badass. But it's got a much physically larger transmission, so this should be cake compared to that. Which means I learned what I needed to learn. We can go ahead and drop this back down. One thing that might be seen as a disadvantage with these cribs is that because they hold it up by the wheels, that means that the axle doesn't droop down like it would if I was suspending it with jack stands under the frame. And that means if I need to remove these exhaust pipes, I'm going to have to still support it by jack stands and remove these cribs in order to get those out. Well, the thing is, of course, now I have the option of doing it either way that I didn't have before. And I think that when I'm going to remove the transmission, I'm not actually going to have to remove the exhaust all the way back, because I've got this joint right here that I can separate. I can just remove the mid pipe, drop that down, and drop out, of course, the drive shaft, and the transmission should come out pretty easily. So we'll see how true those words are when I get to that next week. Well, that feels like success to me so far. As far as the stability goes, well, any worries I had about that are out the window because they are ridiculously stable. I can torque on stuff really hard and not worry about my safety working underneath it. As far as the height goes, making the load deck 7 boards high, which means 10.5 inches, I think that was about the right height to choose, because with the transmission jack that I was able to borrow, it comes up and not only kisses the transmission, but also has a little extra leeway for when it starts taking weight off the suspension, it still can follow that up just a little bit further. If I would have made the stands another 1 board higher, I may not have had that extra leeway. So I think that worked out really well. Of course, I'll find out for sure when I'm actually doing the work, but so far they feel pretty good. I think I did the right thing on that. As far as the width goes, 12 inches wide, that ended up being pretty good, of course, for this car, which has 225 50R17 tires. So those are, what's that, like just about 9 inches wide, I think. So that's not really going to be a problem with that. That car has 245, so they're 20 millimeters wider. And then my truck has 285 70R17 tires. And so those are 11 inches wide, but they're still going to fit on this fine. And honestly, I'm probably not going to use this cribbing on that truck because the truck is already a truck. So as for weight, you might be curious about that. Well, I used 12 2x4s. I did have a little bit of salad left over, but not really a whole lot. And then the weight of the glue and the nails kind of comes back in and replaces that. So figure each one weighs as much as 3 2x4s, whatever that is. I don't even know how much 2x4 weighs, but each one is effectively made of 3 2x4s. So that's what it weighs. Anyway, I'm glad that this worked out for me. If you're inspired to make any of these things, let me know down below. If you made any changes, if you have any advice for me, I'm certainly happy to hear it. Thanks for watching.